My name is Kavita. This is Jeevesh, and this is Chittranjan. I'm a journalist, and they're both activists. And they've recently come up with a book called A Green Day. It's basically a collection of different kinds of stories on climate activism. It's people's personal stories, or maybe organizations that are working on climate change. It's people making music on the environment. It's basically people working on health and climate, people working on water, people working on making documentary films and climate change, basically linking a lot of social issues to climate change via people's personal stories as well as organizational, and how like big movements are working on climate and what are the risks that certain activists take when they question climate change related issues. So we'll have a few minutes at the end for question and answer. And let's begin the session. I am very excited about this session personally because I'm a journalist. I don't get to talk about activism generally, but my parents are activists. So I'm really looking forward to a very inspiring session. So welcome Chittranjan and Jeevesh.
Thank you.
So I think to start the session, Jeevesh has a poem that he'd like to share with all of us.
Hi, everyone. So, thank you, Malayalam Manorama, for having us here. And it's been a long journey with activism. And there's this poem which I thought will charge up everyone here. And I requested Kavita if I can start with this poem. So, I'll just read it out. It's called A Cup Full of Rebellion. A pinch of breeze and a few drops of chlorophyll. A whirlpool of emotion riding on a mint leaf. Simmering bark of an aging oak, smoking anger in disgust. The oozing droplets of blood from its trunk splash parched lands, slowly percolating through the midriff in the ground. Mother Nature is widowed by those who still go to keep her elated and green. Her so-called husbands plundered her first, young and old, who were fed by her and basked in her glory, shot bullets through her very incarnation. Parsley to bitumen, snow to vermilion. It's all stirred and shaken inside a kettle, giving out a poisonous stench. Lift this cup and deeply inhale the aroma. Sip the potion and gulp it slowly down your throat. Are you intoxicated? If you are not, you are dead. If you are, welcome to the rebellion. Yes, welcome to the rebellion. The war has just begun. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeevesh, for that inspiring poem. So there's a quote in the book by J. Krishnamurti which says, "It is no measure of health to be well adjusted to a profoundly sick society." So whether we talk of climate or we talk of human rights or anything, it's all interlinked. We are a part of a profoundly sick society, and it's not okay to be okay with where we're at this point. That's the foundation of this session, talking about what we could do to change it or what people are doing to change what's going on right now. So my first question is that I firstly want to know who is an activist from both of you. So Chittranjan works internationally with international activist organization, and Jeevesh works more nationally. So I'm a journalist. If I write stories that question a government or bureaucrats, people generally might sometimes say that, oh, you're an activist journalist, but I'm just doing my job. So I just want to know if there's a certain definition that there is of activism, who qualifies as an activist.
So before going to answer this question, so thanks to Malayalam Manorama for inviting us here and all the audience and our publisher Hatchet. And now coming to the question, again, it's my definition of who is an activist. For me, the activist means any individual who is working for a social cause, for a bigger good, in a very, very selfless manner without looking for glory, fame, power, wealth, position. And they work in such a selfless manner that they can sacrifice, of course, first themselves, ready to sacrifice themselves. And of course, sometimes their family members, just to serve the society. So that's how I see a role of an activist when it comes to fight and work towards a bigger social cause.
I think two things come to my mind. One are the drawing room warriors. So I don't call them activists. So we, amongst our activist group, we keep using this phrase for drawing room warriors. So So I think drawing room warriors don't practice what they preach. So I think there's two things which I would say is working on ground zero, and second would be practice what you preach. So the smallest thing like not wasting water, to minimum use of plastic, to saving the water which comes out of the water filter. So all that is basically practicing what you preach. And some people who are talking about it and are not doing it, I think it doesn't help. It doesn't make a difference.
So, my next question is that every fight obviously is inspired by hope. If you want to be an activist, you have to be hopeful for a better future. And in the current times, there's little that we have to keep hope alive. So, my question to both of you is that do you have any stories of people who made you come alive as activists, who thought that yes, this is the way forward?
Yeah, so I think there are many stories, and always like we shouldn't lose hope. I know it sounds also very pessimistic because many activists in Europe, climate activists especially, they say like, hope is also a very cliche word. We should move away from this. But I can share some personal stories. For example, for me, one of the most revolutionary climate activists in today's world, or maybe like in the past 100 years, is Roger Hallam. If you have read this book, A Green Day, you'll find he's a British climate activist. And the way he has transformed the entire narrative around climate change, climate crisis is mind-blowing. So if you observe closely, it's a recent phenomena that all over the media, especially the Western media, of course, then the Indian media started also following it, writing it, climate change, climate crisis. It started mostly in 2018. This doesn't mean that it was not happening before. Of course, Adivasis in our country are fighting for decades. Chipko movement is already here. But coming very specific to this individual. So in 2018, 2019, you found that climate activists in Europe started capturing the media space, especially how? By doing the actions. And what were the actions? I was part of that. We in 2018, 17th November, London, myself and many average people from UK, we traveled from all parts of UK, exactly 17th November 2018, 10 in the morning, we captured 5 bridges. If you have to London, the Waterloo Bridge, Westminster Bridge, we were sitting there for the whole day. We created road blockades. At that time, we didn't realize that how big this movement will become. And next day, almost all, you name any Western media, whether it's a New York Times or BBC or The Guardian, or or even in India, the big newspapers, they covered, and then that gave birth to the climate movements all over the world. And we had chapters in more than 100 nations in less than 2 weeks. And the guy who behind was Roger Hallam. Roger Hallam is right now in jail, in prison for 5 years. He is the guy, many newspapers have said, he's just like what Julian Assange in the world of journalism, the real, the real journalism. So Roger Hallam is why sitting in jail, because after giving birth to climate movements like Extinction Rebellion, which is nickname is called AXAR, then Just Stop Oil. Maybe you have seen many clips or videos where some young students are throwing tomato soup on Louvre, inside Louvre Museum on on this Mona Lisa painting. Same thing happened in some museum in Italy, in Spain, in Amsterdam. Roger is my very good friend of mine. And because the government, the European Union governments in different countries, they got fed up with him so much because every month, every day, he was creating a new kind of action because he's an action-oriented guy. And they, in the beginning, they opened some charges against him. Sometimes he was in jail for 2 months, sometimes for 3 months, in and out, coming. Even his health conditions were deteriorating. They his whole bank account was frozen. So the system tried to persecute him in different ways. Also, people around him, the police raids happening immediate, out of blue in the night. They take away your laptop, mobile phones. It happened so many times with him, but still he didn't give up. And finally, this year, because he gave birth to another movement in Germany called the Letzte Generation. In German we call, but it's called Last Generation. That also becomes so radical that the government decided that now we have to put this guy into jail, and he is prison for next 5 years. He and the 4 other members. Their age between 2022, some are in 30, some are in 50 plus. So such people give me hope because he has influenced millions of people around the world. And also through him, many people got inspired, and the Green Party became very popular. You'll find that the Green Party today in power in many parliaments in Europe, whether it's Germany or France or UK. So I will say that there is the hope. At the same time, sometimes I also feel hopeless because the system is very powerful. The government lobby, the corporates lobby, they're extremely powerful people. So they come around you, they harass you, they open lots of a false case against you. Then the greenwashing is also happening. Like, the corporates talk a lot of things. So because sustainability word has become very fashionable in these days, like, green energy, green transition. But if you dig deeper into that, you'll find that again, the real actions are not happening. They talk a lot, but they do very, very little. So I will say I have a mixed feelings, but I haven't given a hope. So I just mentioned Roger Hallam, but there are also lots of activists like in Europe or even in India also, like, who have done amazing job. And I think that we should not lose hope. At the same time, we should come together and fight in a very collective manner, and less talking and do more actions on the streets. This is what I believe in.
Jeevesh, do you have any stories of people who've inspired hope in you to be an activist?
Okay, so for me, I think when Extinction Rebellion came to India, so I was already inspired by my family, and my father was a politician and was jailed during emergency. So I could see activism in my house at a very young age. And after I lost my father, one of my father's closest friends was MC Mehta. And I never knew who MC Mehta was till the longest time. And once I found out, so I approached him while we were doing this book. And from that time till today, I've been working with him. I think he's one of the persons who really inspired me the most, because selflessly to do something, what he did for 40, 50 years, I think is unparalleled across the globe. Because he fought in the court, starting from the Taj Mahal case to the fight for the Ganga, to the Shri Ram case where the poisonous gas came out. He also stood up for the Bhopal tragedy, and then he kept fighting. He gave the country the judgment where all schools should have compulsory environment education, and there are so many cases which we don't even know about, which he kept fighting. And he's also a person who takes any case which comes to him. So I basically asked him one day that what is your way of working? So he said, anyone who comes to me with any issue related to environment, I first visit that place. Whether that is the Bichhadi case in Udaipur or something happening on the beaches of Tamil Nadu or Kerala, he has been everywhere. So he goes there, studies the issue, understands what is the problem, and then he takes it up in the court. And I was interviewing Justice Madan Lokar in Delhi, and he said that MC is one of the persons who has never come unprepared in the court. And I met another lawyer, very young lawyer, in train, and these are first-hand experiences. So I like first-hand experiences while traveling and speak to people. And this lawyer was traveling, he didn't know I'm working with MC Mehta. So I just asked him, do you know MC Mehta? And he said, last time I was appearing in a case on the Ganga, and one side was MC Mehta, and the other side was 1,200 lawyers. And different lawyers were representing different corporates, because across the Ganga, there's so many polluting units and owned by different companies. So they all had different lawyers. So the 1,200 lawyers marking their attendance to the judge, and on the other side is MP Mehta standing alone. I think when I see that, I still haven't been to him in the court. I want to, so because he doesn't keep well anymore. But I've been working with him, interacting with him. I'm doing some writing with him. So I think that is one person who inspire me and should inspire everyone actually. And one message from him would be, he keeps telling me that the activism today in this country is really dying. As Chittranjan also mentioned, that there's hope, but the youth is not joining the activism journey. So it is very hard, and I think youth is very struck with the whole life, which is very cumbersome, which is getting very complicated. They want to earn more, they want to make a living, the unemployment, the inflation. So I think, and there's also a very planned system which is working towards moving the mind away from these issues. No one wants any kind of disturbance on the street. No one wants any kind of voice to be raised. And that, I think, is a point of concern which MC Mehta has, and we all have. And I think that is the message for everyone here.
So when we talk of climate change, we're generally talking about emissions from various companies, industries, and we're talking about disasters happening because of climate change. We have more extreme rainfalls now. There are floods, landslides, glaciers are melting. All this is happening. I was talking to Chittranjan earlier before this session, and he brought about, and also Jeevesh, and they brought about this fact that what is not being talked about probably is the impact of war on climate change. So I think if if maybe Chittranjan could share something on how wars are impacting climate change.
So first of all, thanks Kavita for asking this question. And it's a very sensitive question, and I will share some experience of mine. So in the last 7-8 years, mostly the climate movements have been also captured by the Western world. I would say it started in Europe, USA, and of course now in India also. Thankfully, media is covering. And one thing is interestingly missing is about the impact of wars on climate crisis and ongoing climate damage. And why this happening? I have personally raised this question many times and while working with my European friends, but they on purpose they avoid talking about this topic, though they talk about emissions like by the aviation aviation industry or by the coal. So we know what the oil and gas companies are doing and the plastic pollution. But the war, if you look at the history of wars in the past 20-25 years, and which are the countries who are responsible? Always the other Western powers, who have been to Middle East countries, whether it was Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria. Now it's going in Palestine. It happened in Africa. Before that was also happened in Yugoslavia war, then Vietnam. But why they avoid this? Because the lobby of military industrial complex is so strong that on purpose they avoid writing articles on this, coming this into the discussion forum. But if you look into reality, you'll find that millions of people are becoming refugees because of wars. In the Middle East countries, there are hundreds of millions of people. And what are the climatic, the damages? Of course, there are. If you're dropping bombs, you're not throwing flowers. It is releasing toxic energy, gases. You're destroying the soil. Where the war happened, you bomb those lands. You'll never see any trees going to grow there. Water issue, the sea is polluted, the water is contaminated there. And who is suffering the most? The most people who are suffering are the women. The women suffer the most because they are mothers, then the children's. They become immediately refugees. In the case of climate refugees also, they are the ones who suffer the most. And then they have to move overnight, run away, live in tents, hygiene issues, sanitation issues. And why? The trigger point was the war. Because overnight you have to run. You don't know from where you get food, where you get water. So this wars must be definitely become a serious discussion when it talks about the climate, because I think that on top of discussing this coal issues and aviation industry, we also should discuss that how the wars is destroying millions and millions of lives, and also they consume lots of energy to manufacture, to fund the defense industry. You consume so much energy. That so much energy could be used in building more greener pastures. You can use that money and wealth in moving towards green transition. So this is the thing. I believe that Kavita, thanks. You raise this question here, and we must discuss this again and again. Boycotting this war lobby, whether it's NATO or whoever, or the big the war machineries. I think it's time that we should start discussing this. Thank you so much. So that's from my side.
So there's a chapter in this book which is written by someone called Jeevesh. And it's a very interesting chapter. I thought it was the most interesting one that I found in the book. It is about a story where Yuvan used to work with a school in Chennai and it was infested by rats. So what they did was, obviously they put rat traps to trap all the rats. So over time, over the course of a few months, most of the rats were trapped. But there was this one rat who would get trapped again, would escape, get trapped, escape, just managed to escape all the time. So one day, Yuvan says that he was sleeping and there was this light was on and he just heard some movement on the ground, and he just looked and there was this rat. And the light was sharp enough for him to see, and the mouse was close enough for him to see that the rat was actually blind. So the rat, who was probably more weak than other rats and was blind, was managing to escape from the rat trap again and again, while other rats, more powerful, burnt. They were getting trapped. So then he quotes about this psychological phenomena called learned helplessness. When all your senses, they acquire this helplessness from everything that they see and observe. You learn to become helpless. So the rat, because it couldn't see, it didn't know that a trap is supposed to trap it. So it just thought it was getting stuck somewhere. So it was able to chip the wood and come out every time. While other rats, they knew it as a trap because they get trapped every now and then. They just thought there's no way to escape this. So their senses didn't help them at that point. So I just felt after reading that all of us, like being a journalist, I write on disasters related to climate, and it bogs you down personally. And you're also a citizen who is impacted by everything that happens around you. Then you have Twitter. If you open it, you feel like the whole world is collapsing. There are wars, human rights issues, climate change, disasters, whatnot. So personally, you feel like, you might feel like, okay, if the governments are acting like the way they are, maybe that's how they act. It's fine. If policies are the way they are, they are. If people are dying, they are dying. At some point, you don't know how to keep hope alive in you. You don't know how to get out of that learned helplessness. So there's a quote from the book, and I'd like to read it. It says, oligarchies, authoritarian governments, and oppressors of all kinds strive to create collective learned helplessness. They subject people by design to more and more injustice, inequity, and abuse so that they may grow numb, so that their voices tire, till such a way of being becomes the new, unquestioned normal and solidifies into the customary structure of the society. So, my question to both of you is, how does one become more powerful and not get beaten down to get over this learned helplessness?
I think the whole world of activism in the last many years has been infested by learned helplessness. Because you go to anyone, he says, "Mere karne se kya hoga? What will happen if I do it? Even if I contribute, nothing will change. Everything remains the same. So why should I do it?" But my answer to that is that the whole idea of any system or any lobby which doesn't want you to do it is to basically train you on learned helplessness and make you feel every morning that whatever you do, nothing changes. We are going to cut the trees for the highways. We are going to put up refineries. We are going to move towards green energy, but we are going to keep cutting Hathioran. Hathioran is a forest which is bigger than the size of Delhi. We are going to cut those forests, take out the coal, but we are moving towards green energy. So everyone says that green energy, what should I do for green energy? What should I do for some other concept of which is being sold to me? When on the other side, I can't stop such big forests from being cut. So if I can't do anything, then why am I required? So I better earn my living and enjoy my life today. Whatever will happen after 10 days or 10 months or 10 years or 10 decades, maybe I'm not alive. That is what most of us are living with. And sorry to say, but I don't blame anyone because that is how our minds are being trained to be learned helpless. So I think my answer to that is that every day when I get up, I think I ensure that I think about the issue of the day I'm going to write on, or I'm going to talk to people about, or I'm going to meet some young children, or we're going to protest on that issue, and keep doing it day in and day out. Like when you write a book or when you write an article, like I'm not a journalist, I'm not a trained journalist, but I write something every few days. And I keep writing for the last 10, 15 years. Something gets published, something doesn't get published, but you have to keep doing it. Similarly, I think in activism also, you have to keep trying. And if not, you can't change people, you have to change yourself. I think there's thousands of things which we do wrong as an individual. So we keep changing that. If we improve ourselves only, I think it will be a very big contribution to Mother Nature.
So Chittranjan, my question is that yes, we can do a lot of things, but how to trigger that initiation of change within ourselves to get over this learned helplessness?
I think the first thing is that I'm an optimistic person, So if I personally believe if you are so passionate about any topic, no matter what is going, no matter who is saying what, how many hurdles are there, you'll always find a way. So that the first triggered point will be that you have to ask yourself that, are you really, really concerned? Are you really to give away everything for that cause? If the answer is yes, I think you'll always find a way. Whether it's a climate movement or social movements, political movements, XY or spiritual movement, it doesn't matter. There are so many examples in the human history. In the recent past, or let's say in the last past 100 years, there are examples in our country, Mahatma Gandhi. Look at his life. How he inspired so many people, not only in our country or throughout the world. Nelson Mandela, 27 years in a prison. Come on, this guy never gave up. Then Martin Luther King. So if you look at the suffragettes movements, whether it's about the feminist movement, the women rights, whether the movements around the Black Lives Matter in the USA, around Martin Luther King, Junior, the all movements throughout the human history, whether it's a voting rights, whatever, it was all triggered by endless passion. And for the climate movements, being a climate activist I always say to my friends, like, it's not a one-day job. It's not like you're getting one day on the street and getting a picture, gave a media interview. No, it's not good. It's until we die. It's an endless fight. We have to keep fighting. If you really love your Mother Earth, like, you have to keep moving each and every day. No matter how pessimistic the world looks like, there is always a way. And I have seen some changes personally. Like, when we started climate movements 7-8 years ago, the government didn't take us seriously in the UK, France, Germany, or XYZ. Today, many governments, more than 20 governments, especially in the Western world, they have accepted the first demand of Extinction Rebellion, which was declare climate emergency. They did. Initially, they were putting us in jail and doing harassing us, but it happened. So I will say that there is a hope. Not only hope, I'm very optimistic. You'll find a way. It's just like don't give up. Come on the street, raise a voice, and not only coming on the street, work in parallel with the government, with politicians. They're not our enemies. I don't see government and politicians as an enemy. I don't believe in blame game. We have to work with the lobby group, with policymakers, with journalists, with media, with think tank, with street protesters on the street. So we have to fight at every level. So I have a lot of hope, I will say.
So my next question is that, and I was discussing this earlier with Chittranjan, that, in India, we are a third world country. So a lot of things that go on internationally in terms of climate movements, like they're questioning emissions. But for us, it's also very, very important to grow economically. So when we talk about climate change and, questioning emissions and everything, that becomes very difficult in a country like ours, because a lot of our people are employed by companies who emit gases that increase global warming. So my question is that what should we do in a country like ours? How do we move forward with looking at climate change and what could be done in this regard, or environmentally? What is the way forward for us?
I think the first step to this is to basically change the way we think. I think when you go to, when me and Chittranjan brought Extinction Rebellion and Friday the Future together, we have around 3,000 plus children who got together in Delhi outside Lodi Garden, and we all marched to the Ministry of Environment. And at the Ministry of Environment, there were 5-7 levels of barricade which were put, and we all were laughing because we didn't have any weapons or anything. We were just demanding clean air, clean water, and some action against to save Mother Earth. And finally, 4 or 5 of us were nominated to go inside, and they said, someone wants to speak to you inside the ministry. And we didn't get to meet the minister, we didn't get to meet the Secretary Environment, but we met someone at the Deputy Secretary level. And the first thing which came from her, and which was shocking, was that, why don't you go to America? America is the biggest polluter. Or China is the biggest polluter. What are you doing here? So I think we have to stop blaming others. I think whether we are polluting or someone else is polluting, it doesn't matter. We should look at ourselves. We are polluting enough to stop it. Not that we are polluting where we are like 1% or 0.1% of the polluters in the world. We are a major chunk of it. So we have to work on what we are doing wrong rather than blaming others. I think the first step is done.
Can I answer this question? So it's a very important question, and I have been asked this question a couple of times, whether it's in India or abroad. So I see in, let's say, in 2 parts. The first part is that when it comes to blame game. So looking at the data, historically, it's a fact that in the past 150 years, more than 90% of CO2 emission has been caused by the so-called developed countries like Western world, UK, France, USA, Canada, all these countries. So they are the biggest polluters. There is no doubt. Still, they are the biggest polluters. There is no doubt. And they are a bunch of hypocrites. I have said this to them openly on their face. And so when it comes to the blame game, yes, they have to accept it. There's what is happening also in the all COP meet, where global South countries in these days are coming together and they're saying, guys, stop lecturing us. You have to do something. And I fully support that international level, because the narrative is also very important. We have to fight together, So that's number one. And they have to also compensate. So in the 2009 Copenhagen meet, when COP meet happened, they had promised the developed countries that they are going to give $100 billion each year as part of public climate finance. This money will be given to the developing countries to transition to the green energy, which never happened. They give some small money in form of loans. So they say it's an aid, but it's not aid. It's a media terminology aid, but it's a loan. Behind the scene, they take you 6%, 7%, whatever. You have to give back. And also that's why many countries are collapsing. Sri Lanka was the best example, and also in Latin America. Now coming to part 2, should we only keep doing blame game? it means what? Like, so Indian government will say, oh, look at France, look at USA, what they're doing. But what about you? What you are doing? First of all, the climate change, climate crisis doesn't stop at the border. Okay? If you don't like Pakistan, doesn't mean that if heat waves will stop at the border of your guards will stop on the border of India, Pakistan. No, the heat waves also come here. Same from Afghanistan to Pakistan, same from Sri Lanka to India or India to Nepal. The same way Germany to Netherlands or Germany to France. So climate crisis is a global issue. So you can't say that, hey, because these guys did what in the past, now we will do a lot of coal mining. No, we also need to stop it. But also the question is that, but we are a third world country. Even the third world is a very cliche word. So I will say, let's say we are a developing country. We are emerging, So we need finances. First of all, the coal, based power plants are very cheap. We are talking about a country, India, where still the per capita GDP is around $2,600. Germany has $50,000. So of course we have to be practical also. So what I say that we don't have to go and copy paste everything what the Western world is doing for green, for green transition. What we need to do is that we need to be more mindful. At least we should stop doing deforestation because a massive deforestation is happening on the name of growth, GDP growth. So we should see that, hey, how we should stop following the mistakes of the Western world, what they have done. Because we see the landslides, floods, droughts, heat waves every year, even within India without any war. The millions of people are becoming climate refugees. If you look at even the destruction, I think at one side our government talks about, oh, we are growing with 6% GDP or 8% GDP. But they don't talk about that how much GDP is lost due to climate damage. We are losing billions and billions of dollars every year due to the climatic damages. If we stop that climate damage, that will also result us into becoming more healthier. We will live longer. So we can say in a different way also, if you we have a fresh air, fresh water, healthy environment, people will be more productive. We can be more productive. We can contribute more to the economy. At the end of it, what is about? We are talking about economy, correct? If you stop using this fossil fuel, we become poor. No. So we need to change the narrative, change the perspective that if we create a more healthier environment in our country, the people will be more productive. They will they will live more, they will live longer. So in that way also our economy will grow. And we should also put pressure on the international body that it's a time that they should pay back the money to help us to move towards the green transition, green energy, because at the moment it's quite expensive. And also, I have said many times in Germany, the German government also should work with India to help us to get certain rights. There are certain intellectual property rights they don't want to share when it comes to green transition. So developed countries also need to share these with global south countries, that so that we can also transition much faster instead of doing this blame game and this kind of geopolitics. So that's my answer.
So while climate change is real and we're at the receiving end of it, all of us, whether it be disasters, emissions, whatever it is, we also see that it is a buzzword and there's a lot of funding that is there in climate activism. So every year there are many conferences that are held across the world and you see the same set of people going everywhere, attending those conferences. But I've also seen in my personal capacity that a lot of these people who represent their regions internationally and are present at every climate conference are not doing anything on the ground in their own regions actually. It's just become a fashion to attend every climate conference there is and to then travel those areas and put it on social media that, hey, we were there. So it just, but there are also people who are actually doing work on the ground but don't have funding. They've not cracked into this network of climate activism. They've no idea how to go forward, take their work forward because funding is required. But there are people out there who won't let you in. So have you experienced any of this in your capacity? And what is the solution to this? How do you get the actual change makers forward?
Yeah, so I think it's a good question. So, in every industry or in any sector, any area or sphere of life, there are certain people who are bloody opportunists, so their only goal is that how to make money, power, get glory, fame, position. So same is happening in climate activism or climate change sphere also. There are certain people who are completely disconnected from the ground reality. You won't see them on the street. You won't see them doing anything on the ground, but they are everywhere in UN climate meets or national level meets, always giving media interviews or so they are like TV room warriors, or I would say they are, they have also funding. So I will say a person like me will always ignore them. I am least bothered with such people because you will find in every field, no matter which field you pick. I will be just triggered by my own passion and I would like to work with like-minded people. And coming to the point of funding, to be honest, no matter, even in Europe, whatever climate movements are happening, there is a proper funding. So there are certain like funders behind the scene, because we human beings, we need to survive, correct? You need bread and butter. You need to pay your rent. If you're traveling somewhere, even for a conference, someone should pay for that. So funding is extremely important. And I know that there are certain people, good people, who also fund in a very selfless manner. But at the same time, there is also a certain kind of lobby, again in a very corporate manner, like, they take all the funds. They don't let other real people to come into it. So it's a very difficult fight. So I won't say that I can answer that completely, like how to tackle that. The only way to tackle is that you should become so, like, visible. At the same time, if you're passionate, sooner or later, people are going to identify you. And funding is extremely important, no matter climate activists in India or abroad, because there are so many students or youth. I know also many adults, they have given up the job, like, and they have families. So they became passionate for 6 months, 1 year, and then they gave up because they said, hey, we don't have money, like, how to survive. We have to also go back to a normal life, because now how to pay the bill, from where to buy the food. So these are the realities. So I will say we need to find a balance, and yeah, just I will say ignore such guys who are just TV room warriors, and, like, also sometimes it's good to expose them also.
Jeevesh, do you have any gems to share with us?
I think fundraising is a very tricky area. So I think I've done a few crowd funds and raised a few lakh rupees for my NGO campaign for differently abled. We've raised a lot of money going house to house or from friends and family for the environment movement. But every money which comes from a corporate or from a big business house, mostly is money which comes with some demands. They always have something which you have to compromise with. So I think that compromise for us has never happened. And that is the reason I think our NGOs are as poor as they can be. And the way forward is, as Chittranjan said, there are some good people who are always happy to fund you. And I think you have to keep filtering and keep filtering. It's a very long process. It's a very frustrating process. But you have to follow that and you keep waiting for the right money to come in. I think when the right money comes in, till then you self-fund it, or you keep doing crowdfund, keep raising money. I think that small money also matters a lot. So you keep bringing it together. I think the movement never dies. That is my experience.
So my next question is for something for all of us here. So some of us look young, they might want to, be activists maybe or contribute in some capacity. Some of us a little older, have regular jobs, but might want to know what we can do to, at least contribute or at least not do worse personally in terms of, we don't worsen the climate crisis. So are there any suggestions of how one should enter into activism, or if one doesn't want to be a full-time activist, how can one just make things better in a personal capacity?
I think everyone can be an activist. And to be honest, activist doesn't mean that you go on the street and start protesting and doing road blockades. That's one part of that. But you can be an activist without doing all those things. And how to do that? As an individual, I will say, become more conscious about what you consume, And when it comes to consumption, whether it's a food, what you eat, be very mindful. Like, I'm a vegetarian, so I always say, like, it's very good to be vegetarian, because in that way also, like, so I don't want to offend anyone here who are non-vegetarian, but I'm saying now this vegetarian movement is growing bigger and bigger. Thankfully, it started from India thousands of years ago. Now in Europe also, you'll find people are becoming more vegetarian. Even during the Greek civilization, Plato was a vegetarian. His all students are vegetarian, So that's one biggest tool. In daily life, you bring this habit. If you eat meat every day, start eating less. Let's say 3 days a week, then 2 days a week, once a month. That's one thing. The clothes we consume, like, don't consume too much. You should be very mindful, like, do I really need to buy it? And I would love to see second-hand shops in India. I'm not very much aware if we have such a culture. In European world, second-hand shops are so big now. Even rich people go there and buy it. So consume less, buy second-hand clothes. Then, like, use public transport. Like, instead of having 4 people, there are 4 members in a family having a 4-car. Why? Why do you need 4 cars? Just to show off. So these small things, have only 1 car. If possible, use metro or public transport. Like, walk more, good for health also. If possible, ride a bicycle. These are very small things. And using water very consciously. Water, I live in Delhi. I was surprised. Like, I don't always live in Delhi. I live in Germany, but I was visiting my parents that water is coming on alternate days. So people, the middle class, have the storage. So they store. Otherwise, the water, how come like it's a capital of like Delhi and water? So I'm saying again, so consume water in a much conscious manner. So these, by following these small things also, I think you can become a climate activist in your daily life. Like, I doubt anyone will open a case against you. I think you can do silently in your private life. Don't consume plastic, all these things. Just become mindful. Just become a part of the nature. Develop compassion, empathy in a very spiritual manner with a tree, hug a tree, love, kiss them. Like, treat them as your parents, mother, father, children, whatever you want to. Like, with animals. I think this is the most beautiful, powerful way to become a climate activist without creating, like, I do road blockades a lot. So without doing those things. So that's my answer.
Jeevesh.
I think the media has a very important role to play. So what Chittranjan said is obviously at an individual level, but I believe that activism has to become a movement. So how do we ignite the youth? Today, when we open the newspaper in the morning, or when we switch on the news on the TV, we only see negative news about environment. That a forest got burnt, so many trees got cut, or we read about the war. So whenever the youth, who we expect to come up as activists, read that, they feel that what can I do to it? I'm only reading negative news every day. So he's already frustrated early in the morning. Through the day, they feel that, okay, just ignore it. So I think the media has a very important role to play to bring out the positive side of the work which is happening in this space. For example, you talk about the green GDP of Uttarakhand. I don't know how many of you have read about it. The green GDP of Uttarakhand is around 85,000 crores. And the actual GDP, the economic GDP is around 20,000 crores. So the forest, if they stay there without cutting the tree, without negatively affecting Mother Nature, the GDP, the green GDP is so high. So even if we go by the economic value of it, we can understand that it still holds so much of value for us, which is higher than what we are creating through employment, through factories, or whatever we are creating. So that if the youth understands that, I think they will realize that, because everyone thinks that I have to go and earn my bread and butter. So if I do activism through the day, how will I pay my bills at the end of the month? So I think everyone has to understand that this is something which is a part of you. Like you need oxygen, like you need food, like you need water, and the air is not going to be clean. You're going to fall ill. Your lifespan is shortening. Look at Delhi. What is happening in Delhi? Look at the Yamuna. Look at the air. I remember standing up for the 50,000 plus trees in 7 GPRA colonies, which is right on the ring road in Delhi. Starts ahead of the Hollow Kuan and goes on till the All India Institute of Medical Sciences. And they've cut so many trees one after the other. It's not a joke. And now those people who were actually laughing at me when I used to go there to die in protest, we would lie on the road and act as dead bodies to basically ignite the people to feel that this is what is going to happen to you. And still people would laugh and we would keep doing it. But now people come back to me and say when they see that construction and now it is already, the blunder has already happened, we lost the forest, we lost the trees, they come back to me and say, how will these houses get water? The previous system is choked. Look at Barapula, the biggest sewer of Delhi. Someone was telling me it will take 3 years plus to clean the silt out of that sewerage line. And by the time you clean it, it will have maybe 3-4 times more silt already there. So a city like Delhi, or for example, even Chennai, even Bangalore, even Calcutta, Bombay, all are choking. So if people are not going to come on the street and are not going to fight tooth and nail, I think we're just watching for disaster to happen. Like what Kavita was telling us a short while back. She said that in Nainital, the houses where her parents live and she also goes and live, every time there's a rain, they feel we are coming down. So isn't that a biggest alarm one can get? Obviously feel that we'll keep earning our daily bread and butter and someone else will go and do it. Will stand against the system or will ask for demand for our rights. I think we're just waiting for one after the other disaster to happen. And nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeevesh, for that perfect response. And now I think it's the right time to open for question and answer. If anybody has any questions.
Sir, as you rightly pointed out about the green GDP. Green GDP. What we want is green GDP instead of a greedy GDP. That is what is pursued by the casino capitalists, the cronies. My question is regarding whether the generative AI paradigm can help mitigate climate crisis cataclysm, because the generative AI could be effectively used for creating and sensitizing the Z generation and alpha generation with a Gaia, green Gaia, digital twin, digital double of green Gaia for conservation purpose, creating a cyber twin of Gaia, the goddess, Earth goddess. So in such a way, we can sensitize our Z generation and alpha generation about the climate crisis, climate cataclysm, landslides, etc. So, could the generative AI modeling can curtail the cataclysm of climate crisis? Because global boiling, global hypoxia, oxygen level is dipping because of global boiling.
It was a long question, but I think one of the things you were asking, sir, was can generative AI help in reducing global warming and the climate crisis?
I think definitely, like if you look at the tech stack in these days, I still remember when I attended the UN COP meeting in 2019 in Madrid, there were a lot of guys who were talking about the involvement of AI, artificial intelligence, that how to reduce the carbon emission, all these things. So there is a lot going on in that space. For example, people like Elon Musk or Bill Gates, they are talking about developing certain AI-based tools which are going to. So again, it's about technology, how to do the carbon capture. So they come with the mindset like you don't need to move away from the kind of lifestyle you have, keep consuming what you're doing, but we need to become advanced so much into technology that it sucks the carbon, carbon emissions, and at the same time, the AI tools will go and in more advanced manner, they can foresee like how the weather patterns are going to change, so you can avoid the heat waves or the floods going to happen, or even the the floods and monsoon are going to happen. So they are coming with this mindset. We can play with the nature, okay, by using AI tools, by understanding how the climatic conditions are going to change in certain part of the world. But I have a little bit different, take on that, especially because though I am from IT, I work in the technology sector, but I am also passionate about climate activism, and so I personally believe that I think Kavita also mentioned during having lunch about this technology, all this thing. I am not very much very supportive of that, because the same multi-billionaire who are propagating this idea of generative AI using AI tools, it's purely driven by the crony capitalism. They want to make more and more money by using and they also want to get more funds from for the government by using taxpayers' money, free money to go and do research, all those things. You can question this narrative. You can question me that whether really it's going to help. But I have a little bit pessimistic view on this. I am not against that, the use of technology, how to mitigate this climate crisis. But I'm also saying that this is also one of the tools, excuses to start doing some real actions. And for me, the simple things are stop doing deforestation, stop using this fossil fuel, all these things. But yeah, I'm not an expert on that, to be honest. That how to use generative AI, you can stop this climate mitigation. I hope I answered the question.
So my question is basically that, in this session, I heard not many mention of neoliberalism, not as collection of corporates in a lawsuit, but as the system that drives all this ecological catastrophe and all. So, based on your arguments, advocacies, I think that you are still mentioning on negotiations within that system and not as something outside it. So there was this Brazilian trade unionist and environmentalist, Chico Mendes. He said that environmentalism or climate activism without class struggle is just gardening. Are you guys purporting gardening too? No, I'm confused.
So okay, so you want to target the neoliberalism, and so for me, I see neoliberalism as one of the biggest problems that led to where we are, we are today in the world. So after the end of colonialism, I think the neoliberalism, the way the whole the economy works, and the way the corporate worlds are working, the way lobby groups work, I think that's the root cause of all the issues what we see around, like, around the climate. So definitely we are against that. So I'm not part of that. I'm not supporting them. I'm in my day-to-day job, of course, I'm a part of it. I'm doing a job also. Okay, so I have to pay my bill. So I'm part of, you can say, but as an individual level, I'm totally against that. And of course, there are a lot of lobby groups, even there are a lot of NGOs or even some climate movements are also who are supporting neoliberalism in a very subtle way, though they're part of climate activist group, all those things, but they're part of the same, like, in the big cake, big, pie chart, they're also sitting somewhere. But I don't think that neoliberalism is the answer for that. And we need also very strong, another bodies which are against that, which are sitting outside of that and can put some pressure on these bodies who are making the decisions. And I think that will come through the climate activism only. Like the radical activists, the guys who are really working, in a selfless manner.
Just to add to that, I think one of the biggest reasons why this book, A Green Day, the book we're talking about now, took a long time to come out was because we let the essays of environmentalists come to us organically. We did not reach out at any famous figures across the world. If you see the names in the book who have written the essays, I think 80% of the people, anyone out there would not know. Because the whole reason was that there are some people who are famous everywhere in the media and are speaking everywhere on environment, but the impact is not coming. So there has to be a reason why that impact is not coming. So that was the biggest reason that we brought in people and we just kept looking for people online, offline, from hearsay, someone who talk about someone, Chittranjan, me or Professor Anandji, we will reach out to that person and ask, what are you doing? Can you write for our book? Some of the essays, we didn't care whether a person was famous or not, whether anyone knows that person or not. But if the work is, if we read the work and we feel that it is a genuine work which is being done in any part of the world, we picked up, we tried from South America to Africa, from Australia to Russia, everywhere. We contacted people. And we finally brought together their stories and we presented this book.
Okay, everyone are because all of us are not little bit serious about these things, and the thing is that the how can we how can we more how can we be more serious in these cases by in education education
Are you asking whether the school in the school how do
Yes.
you learn about
Ah.
the real issues and so that you can do something about it
Yes,
while growing up?
exactly.
Okay. Okay. So I think let me tell you that there's already a Supreme Court judgment, very clear judgment, which says that environment education is compulsory in all the schools. So now I think it is for people like you. Are you studying in a school? Okay. So it's people like you who should go to your school and start questioning. If you're not being taught environment in a proper way or not being taught at all, I think you start asking, why we not being taught about environment, why we not taught about environment laws, why we not made to plant saplings, understand what a plant is all about, it grows into a tree, or the air, composition of the air, what is pollution. So all this, some of the questions I mentioned, is obviously it is a huge subject. So once you start questioning that, I think then the real change will happen. Because I believe that in the world of law, in Indian law, and in the last 50 years of judgments being passed in the court, I think not a single issue on which a judgment is not there. And they're landmark judgments. But the problem is implementation at ground zero. Those laws are not implemented on ground at all, or maybe 5% or 10% implementation is there. If those laws are implemented diligently, selflessly at ground level zero, I think we will see a storm of change across the country.